YouTube. I just wanted to make another video. Just some thoughts about one thing I realized is that I realized this a long time ago, but the older I get, the more evident it becomes that a lot of people get older, or let me say this, let me put it like this: everybody gets older, but everybody doesn't grow up. I'm 34, and I'm not gonna act like I'm just the most mature adult and things like that. But I consider myself mature. I consider myself a productive citizen. I consider myself, I guess, in the know. I'm not out of touch. I understand who I am. I understand my age. I understand my place in society. I understand, what I look like, who I am, who I'm not. Like, I understand that, and that's what makes me makes me an individual. And a lot of the times, I feel like people don't really understand that. A lot of people, especially if you go back to high school, a lot of people, it's kind of when I would say you kind of build your personality, who you are, kind of what you like, who you're gonna be. Is kind of shaped in high school, and you see a lot of people that you went to high school with. Like I said, I'm 34, so I've been out of high school since 2011. A lot of these people, they still act exactly the same. They still talk about the same things, they still do the same things, they still act the same way. It's just like nothing's changed. And you have people with children, multiple children, some people with adult children. I have people my age with adult children. One of my wife's friends is a year older than me, and she has a 20-year-old son. uh, I know plenty of people with teenage children, and that are my age, or younger, or around my age. And like I said, I'm 34, so like I said, I'm not that old, but I'm also not spring chicken. But with me personally, I had to work at a young age. I feel like I had to grow up young. Well, I can't really say a young age. I mean, I was 16, right? It's not like I was, had a full-time job when I was 11 years old, like Major Payne. You know what I mean? But at the same time, even then, at those ages, I was cutting grass and everything. I just felt like I was exposed to a lot early, and like I say, I grew up with in a single parent household, just me, my mother, and my sister. So that kind of pushed me out there in the world a little bit earlier, maybe than I wanted to. But I feel like that also built my character and made me mature. And because it's a couple pathways you can go down too, uh, people from my same background in that same scenario. Some people, they kind of internalize that, and they want to they let that be a excuse for why they act the way they act. I didn't have a father, I didn't have a mother, or I didn't have this. At some point, you have to look at yourself, no matter what's going on. Even if you had a bad parent, you had some bad experiences, you had just kind of, people do you wrong. At some point, it's on you to not necessarily fix it, but it's on you to deal with it. If it's something that you can't let go from high school, if you need to ask yourself, why is that? Why do I still feel the need to, do these things that I did when I was 16, 17 years old? Why do I still feel the need to act the same way? Uh, why do I still feel the need to hang around these same people, do the same things, and pretty much be in the same spot you were as a teenager? Now, people get older, people get jobs and things like that, but it's like it's more of a mentality, Um, and this might rub some people the wrong way, but like I see things like wrestling, like WWE, right? When I was a kid, I was a wrestling fan, but now I feel like kids aren't even wrestling fans. Most of the wrestling fans are grown men my age and older. Now, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but like, at some point, you have to let the children be children and let them have these things like Pokemon. You got a bunch of grown men and women, running around destroying Pokemon, um, scalping cards and knocking little kids over trying to get card packs. And it's like, and I understand a lot of people are doing it for money, but it's like, you know, and I hate to put it like this, but like, go get a real job, you know, go get a real job. And I know a lot of people make a lot of money doing it, but you know, you're scalping tickets or scalping cards, from children. You taking the joy away from a child just to make a couple dollars. I feel like, it's just morally, and you can talk about morals and ethics or whatever, right? I feel like morally it's just not a good look, and I mean that might be another subject, but it just goes back to just still having this young mentality, not growing up, um, not wanting to be an adult, and that's kind of what it is. I guess a lot of people are running away from that. You got like, Disney adults who want to act like children, and then it's okay to like Disney, but if you've seen the videos on YouTube and these things of these Disney adults who, their whole personality is Disney, you know, just from the top to bottom, whole personality is Disney, and it's like eventually you have to let these things go. I'm not saying you can't like Disney, but don't they make content for children? Why is it a bunch of adults going to see Toy Story 5? A bunch of adults, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way. But eventually, you just gotta grow up, man. You gotta grow up. You can like what you like and do what you want to do, but understand there's, young people, just like when we were young. I'm a millennial, right? So I don't remember, watching wrestling back in the day and it being just a bunch of grown men there. I remember being kids my age. I don't remember playing Pokemon and it was a bunch of grown men in the store knocking kids over. I don't remember, even now you could talk about like the club scene, right? How you got a bunch of, grandmas and grandpas, but mostly grandmas, strutting around, acting like they're in college, 40s, 50s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. You know what I mean? Let the young people be young. Let them do their thing. You had your time in the sun to do these things. You had 20, 30 years to do what you were supposed to do, right? And if you didn't do it in that time, that's on you. But, I'm not saying you can't have fun. I'm not saying you can't, do different things or, be nostalgic or still do things that you did when you were young. But, like, at some point, everybody has to grow up. Everybody has to grow up. And I think the cicadas agree. And Yeah, even me, it's been times where I had to look at myself and say, yeah, I need to stop doing this. I need to stop doing that. I can let this go. Because I got to grow up. I got to live in the real world. But, yeah, that's it.